I'm really hoping I have no problems recording this. I have been trying to record this particular video since last week. So I tried to do it on the computer and the file got corrupted. I don't know how that happened. I guess sometimes it just happens. So I figured, okay, well, let me wait till Monday and do it on my phone when I had the actual issue in front of me. And I complain about my phone a lot. And so I figured, let me do some troubleshooting because I tried to record the video a couple of times. And by a couple of times, I mean more than a couple, like 4 times I tried to record it. And I even tried to record another video after that. And the same thing kept happening. So I looked it up and then I just realized, oh, it's because this phone is just a crappy phone for doing that. Oh, I don't understand I don't understand why these phone companies do that. It's sort of, we live in an age where people need their camera phones to do what they're supposed to do, and you not decide to do it for them so that you mess up everything that they're doing. Like, seriously. So that happened. And so I decided, you know what, I'm getting too frustrated. So let me just come back to OBS, which rarely leads me astray. And let's just try to do the video on that. So, Middlewest. I caught up to issue 15, which was the more recent issue that came out in February. Now, I raved about book 1. I think I probably raved about book 2, but I started to have some concerns. And so I figured, let me not wait till book 3. Let me read the issues per issue and see how I feel about it. And yeah, I'm not going on. I'm not going to read on to Middlewest. The art is still amazing. The art is still amazing. And, you know, you know, George Corona does fantastic visuals. And so certainly I think what would have carried me on if I had not done a little digging once I felt, displeased, you know, I probably would have tried to push myself. So here's what happens in the issue. Nothing. Nothing happens in the issue. So essentially what you get is you get the kids at the farm and they're trying to figure out how to get themselves free. Shouldn't be a bad idea, right? They're now slaves. So they should want to try to figure out how to rescue themselves. On the other side, you have the adults who now have decided that even though they have been A-okay with not doing anything about this child slavering for as long as it's been going on, now they've decided that they are going to do something about it. Which, okay, it should be fine, except both sides are just terrible people. I mean, we have moved to the point, and this is where I decided that I was not going to move on. We moved to the point where literally every character is unlikable. I expressed my concern about the black girl because I just had a feeling that, she was she was a sign of things to come, and I felt glad when they had left her behind. But of course, that leaving her behind you know, she didn't stay gone for long because of course she is going to be part of the main ensemble. And her being part of the main ensemble just highlights everything that I cannot stand about the series anymore, because now it has taken a full turn to full on progressivism. And if the story were still what it was supposed to be about, which it was supposed to be a coming of age story, with Abel and this strange occurrence that happens to him, and the complicated relationship between he and his father, and trying to figure out what happened with his mom and things. Like, I think if the story stays on, if the story stayed on that, that is what made that is what made the story masterful. But we've not had that for a while. After he found the grandfather, it's like something just changed and it just became full on progressivism and kids behaving badly, adults behaving badly, and nothing, like there's nothing to recommend because there's not a single character that I want to follow anymore. And then, we definitely get into the why it's called Middlewest, which I knew in the first place because I live in the Midwest. So I know that anytime you name something based on the Midwest and you root something similarly based on the Midwest, and especially when you're dealing with progressives, I know what you're going to get. So I wasn't surprised when that happened. But last week, I decided I wasn't going to read on with Middlewest. And then, I was trying to figure out what is a good photo to do the thumbnail, and I found this article, and it just solidified the reason why I'm not interested. So, as you can see, the title is Meet George Corona, whose stunning visuals and comic Middlewest help challenge toxic masculinity. And anytime you say toxic masculinity and anything that challenges it, that just, it totally is, those are the buzzwords that just get my spidey senses tingling. And so, of course, you have to mention the writer had to mention the rise of female-centered stories, which has not been very much successful. And I'm pretty sure I've talked about it, and I'm pretty sure others have talked about it. And I kind of want to do a more in-depth video as to why these female-centered stories are not a good idea. So, still the idea is we're getting more female-centered stories, but of course, sexism and machismo are still present because, you can't have, you can't have a progressive article without the isms being thrown out. And so, right, Scotty Young first came up with the idea to write Middlewest, the coming of age story of a boy and his relationship with his father, which is what I signed on for. So basically, he didn't think about the term toxic masculinity. And you could tell in book one that he didn't, and so. And I will give him credit for that. You could tell in book one that he just tried to make a standard, interesting coming of age story, complicated father-son relationship story, set in a kind of fantasy world. And that was what made it beautiful. But then, of course, we get to the second part of that. But through his words and the illustrations of Venezuelan artist George Corona, he ended up creating a world that challenges toxic masculinity. And that's the problem. Because others came in and said, oh, you're doing this story that's about this. And he seems to believe it because he made this switch himself. And for me, it's not very successful because I didn't sign on for a story that challenges toxic masculinity because I'll be honest, when they talk about toxic masculinity, they're not talking about men behaving badly. They're talking about men behaving like men. And that really kind of bothers me because even women like this Isabel Sophia Dieppe, like feminists like that, they talk about men being men as being toxic, but these are the same women who want to turn around and just who want to act like these same men because they want that same level of power. And it's silly. It's silly to me. So yeah, once we got to that, and then once I read this part, the combination of the images and the words captures the vulnerability of prepubescent boys. And it's a type of vulnerability that has been historically stifled in media. Yeah, if boys are vulnerable now. It's not because of toxic masculinity, it's because of this agenda pushing propaganda that progressivism and feminism pushes on boys to tell boys, you must be ashamed of who you are. You must not behave like a man is supposed to behave. You're supposed to behave, as what a woman is supposed to behave as, and that would make you a good person according to them, even though it doesn't. And so, yeah, I wish I had read this article. I wish I had read this article a year ago, or I wish I read it before I picked it up, because I picked up Middlewest more recently. But I wish I had seen this article, because I probably would have stayed away from it. Like, I don't. It's kind of a hard thing, because I look at, Middlewest is an independent comic, and I do say that all the time. I give a lot more license to independent comics because these are original ideas that are being written out. So I don't mind if it's not an established character. You can make the story that you want to make. But we're now in an arc where literally nothing is happening. Nothing of interest is happening to push what is supposed to be the main idea of the story. And for me, maybe it's because I have a short level of tolerance for that, because I have no tolerance for stories that are supposed to be about something and the story doesn't push forward, because this does not, this arc does not push the story forward. It's literally just a way to give commentary about how adults are evil, how adults are hypocritical, and basically how kids should rule the world, even though the kids are terrible themselves. And so, we're not dealing with vulnerability of kids, we're dealing with bad people all around. And everyone is terrible. Everyone is terrible. And I can't read stories like that. So for me, Middlewest is done. And yeah, it's done because I can now see. And yeah, I already knew that I was not going to look at Strange Academy, which will also be written by Scotty Young, because I look at just the cover of that and I look at what the premise is about, and it's probably going to be similar to this, because I think once he introduced more kids into this world, then you just literally got everybody behaving badly and then just forced cursing for the sake of cursing, because it's always their idea of being edgy, is just making kids curse, and it doesn't come off as natural anymore, because you're trying to do it because you're just trying to be edgy, and then kids just behaving badly, and then we're just blaming adults because adults are terrible, and we make sure that everyone has a horrific story so that you can never say that it's you can never point out that maybe the kid, you shouldn't have done X. Yeah, I'm done. Like, I can't do books where everyone has to be a victim, and it has to be, they wear their victimhood as a shield so that their bad behavior can just be excused because, well, I was victimized. So no thank you, no to Middlewest, and that'll be it for this video. So of course, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, do the bell stuff for notifications, share this, do all of that. If you don't mind this kind of stuff going on, then by all means, continue to read Middlewest. I do mind it, so I'm definitely not continuing on. And I will see you in the next video. Bye.